Welcome to the Alphagenix Podcast, where every week we have amazing guests talking about longevity, biohacking, health, wellness, and of course, with a bias towards men's health. So I'm delighted today to introduce Daniel White, or the Sleep Guy. Daniel, how did you become the Sleep Guy?
Rob, thank you so much for welcoming me on the podcast. I became the sleep guy because I was the guy that didn't sleep for a really long time. Could tell you that story if you want.
Go for it. Yeah.
So I'm 29 years old now. From the age of 13 to 16 or 17, I was really wrapped up in video gaming. At a time when not many other teenagers owned a lot of technology devices, I was heroin addicted to those things, and I spent a lot of time staring at screens really late into the night, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., the equivalent these days of just scrolling the Instagram and the Facebook and everything that people do, and the Netflix, which didn't exist 15 years ago. But as a youth, I suffered really terribly with sleep related problems, and that caused and contributed towards a lot of mental health related issues, anxiety, depression, suicidality. Not to say that there wasn't some addictive stuff going on with the video gaming as well. I was also very overweight, and from a very young age, this hugely impacted, my masculinity, my hormones, my emotional regulation, my strength, my cognitive ability, all of that sort of stuff. Went on a bit of a 10-year journey through health and well-being, becoming a registered nutritionist, studying functional medicine. So really diving deep into all aspects of like mind, body, spirit, emotional health, mental health, physical health, and all the world of biohacking and all this amazing, cool and exciting stuff. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, I suffered a period of burnout. And once again, I was met by, a difficult relationship with technology, trying to keep my business alive, burning the candle at both ends, being a bit of a party guy as well at the weekends, enjoying socializing, all of those sorts of things, but largely just tons and tons of stress. And so I went through another period of sleeping really poorly and took a bit of time out of work. Dived so deeply into the sleep literature, everything from the evolutionary approach to the raw science, and every book in between, that speaks more to sometimes the more tangible things about real life and sleep, and developed my own, appreciation for the superpower that we can unlock within each of us when we get sleep right. And the thing that I've come to learn over my experience in becoming the sleep guy is that sleep is a skill, right? And that includes many small skills, many tools we have in that toolbox, but it is so broad and it encompasses so much. And that in the modern world, especially in modern medicine, where we hyper specialize in certain areas, even within sleep science and sleep medicine, we've become too focused on certain things and we neglect the bigger picture of sleep, which for me is marrying evolution with science. So that's how I kind of journeyed here. For the last 4 or 5 years, I've now been working with individuals, groups, organizations all over the globe to try and bring a bit of a contemporary and also evolutionary spin on how we look at this thing called sleep.
Yeah, I can't wait to dive into that in more detail, because it's a massive part of our lives. We spend a third of our life approximately asleep, and yet most of us don't think about it as anything else other than you close your eyes. And of course, that's not it. When we close our eyes, our body goes into this incredible other mode where we're recovering from injury, we're building new muscle tissue, we're replenishing neuropeptides and chemical transmitters. It's incredible what goes on when we're asleep. So, no wonder it can have such an effect on us. So where did you notice the biggest difference? Because you said, you were feeling in a place where you were suicidal and of a very low mood. What was the first thing that changed when you married up good sleep?
Yeah, so it's difficult to reflect now backwards to my youth and being a teenager. I think many things changed. As I began to spend less time in front of screens and technology devices, I probably gained a lot of motivation and drive. My dopamine pathways were working properly. I began to care about more things again, my hobbies, my passions, my studies. But as I look back over the last couple of 3 or 4 years, the most major changes, number one, I don't always feel like I'm running on empty. A lot of my young adult life, early 20s, was spent highly caffeinated, just rushing from the gym to work to studying to this to that, really sleeping, a lot later than I should have been. My focus is incredible now compared to the times where I used to work harder. I now work a lot smarter, right? So, my ability to really zone in and focus on my task and what I'm doing, and ability to stay present and motivated. And, I know that this is a lot to do with like the balancing and the regularity now of like my hormones and my neurotransmitters, like you said, cortisol and adrenaline, stress hormones, more regulated, levels of testosterone, levels of dopamine, much higher, reward, focus, motivation, drive. I think that's the best benefits for me have been those factors. I've gained a lot of strength as well, gained a lot of muscle, shredded a lot of fat very, very, very quickly from attuning my circadian rhythm and, also focusing on other areas of lifestyle as well. But things like clinging on to excess weight, always feeling a little bit close to burnout, always a little bit on the edge, not being able to connect to myself emotionally as deeply. I think that's another huge one as well, because, in the years since I've unlocked my super sleep, I would call it, I've also been through a lot of other deep emotional experiences and resolved a lot of, you could call them traumas in my life that I couldn't get anywhere close to when I was always living in a state of, high stress because of the poor sleep that I experienced.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a million questions after that. There's loads of good stuff there. I can definitely identify with that running on empty thing, and I bet a lot of people watching this do as well. I remember for years before my eventual diagnosis with low testosterone, where it was running on empty, I used to describe it as I felt like one of those antique toy robots, and I needed the key putting back in and winding back up because I just ran out of wind. But listening to you talk, you could easily say, that was running on empty. And it was regulating my hormones that then allowed me to sleep and then allowed me to eat better and embrace the hobbies and exercise and everything you've mentioned, that brings you into this sort of positive spiral where you do start feeling better. And you mentioned emotions there as well, which I think is a big one, because I don't know what you think, but if you are running on empty, you're not really ready to start tapping into your emotions because you already don't feel that you're optimal. So the last thing you want to do is start to go digging around in sort of the emotional side of you as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I've done a lot of self-exploration. I've worked with a lot of clients, hundreds and hundreds of clients in one-on-one scenarios now. And we've looked at, physical health in terms of movement and, breath work and stress regulation. We've looked at nutrition, supplementation, and all these sorts of things. But it would appear that like sleep is the one thing that allows people to journey much deeper within themselves, because especially when a lot of people will maybe go down a kind of more spiritual route, right? To uncover some of these emotional issues they may be facing, to be unable to recover and restore and rejuvenate and ground yourself through deep restorative rest is the difference between really, moving through that into a more positive state of mind, or, really like resolving or processing those experiences. Because when we are underslept chronically, which, between you and I, 80-90% of the nation, is probably running on caffeine because it's the most ubiquitous drug, in the world. And we will normalize the consumption of caffeine and alcohol in our lives, and nicotine and, other stimulants, all sorts of drugs people use these days, prescribed illegal or otherwise.
Did you say 80 to 90 or 18 to 19?
I'd probably say 80 to 90 if we're really talking about it.
Wow.
I think that science does a very poor job of representing the ability of human beings to get like unbelievably superpowered sleep. Because what we consider to be normal, the same as when we talk about testosterone levels and we go to the doctor and we see that our range is within normal, and then we go to a functional doctor, or we go to somebody else and they say, well, this range could be a lot higher than it is. It's the same when I see people who say to me, I sleep well, I get 8 hours out every night. And I say, but do you jump out of bed? Do you feel energized all day? Do you wind down perfectly at night? All of these sorts of things. And the answer, as a result of many of the conditions of our modern society, is largely no. we're not sleeping like hunter-gatherers. We're not as energized. We're not as strong. We're not as athletic. And so all of the research that's done around sleep is, are you close to the status quo? And if 70% of people aren't even close to the status quo, then, what percentage of people are really optimizing their sleep?
Yeah, wow, that's quite scary. But you mentioned a number of things. I mean, the general pace that we live at nowadays, the fact that we're never far away from our phones and technology. Everything is designed to kind of give us this little dopamine hit, wake you up, tie you to that piece of technology, and I think none of that helps your melatonin production and your sleep.
Yeah, I think what I've become particularly passionate about, one area, and the reason I care so much about this area is primarily because it was one of the things that drove my poor sleep, but also because I think it's one of the, if not the low-hanging fruit, something that we could all do in the modern world to improve our sleep with very little effort. And that's to consider, as well as during the daytime, we have a requirement to be outdoors in natural light, which sets our body clock, our internal, what we call circadian rhythm. At night, it's recreating or ameliorating or adapting our nighttime lighting environment to make it more like nature. Because I believe, and so do many other researchers, not all, because people tend to silo into certain areas of interest when it comes to sleep. But those of us who study light exposure are very well aware of the detrimental impacts of bright, especially cool white LED lighting in the evening, and how that's evolutionarily at odds with the functioning of our entire body. Like every cell in our body has a timing switch which is turned on and off by light in the environment. As soon as we turned indoors, we began this huge, massive experiment on ourselves by exposing ourselves to static types of lighting, unlike the sun and the moon and firelight, which is ever changing, ever becoming brighter and darker, and these cycles of day to day. We now live in temperature controlled environments where the light is static. And we have no true understanding of what that does to us, but we're very well aware that it suppresses melatonin, it decreases, tiredness, it increases alertness, it increases stress hormones, and basically turns our body clock upside down by tricking our body into believing it's daytime. And that for me is enough evidence to know that if I wear some, I'm sorry, I haven't got any here now, blue light blocking glasses, or if I make my, here we go, he's got the daytime ones, or if I turn my home into the red light district at night, and I take all of these harmful types of artificial light outside of my environment, then my sleep quality can improve without me doing anything else necessarily. So that's one of the biggest factors for me.
But blue light blocking glasses, they've definitely improved my sleep. So yeah, have these ones to sort of late afternoon, evening if I'm on the computer, and then I have some orange ones for closer to bedtime.
The orange ones are the key.
Yeah, they're definitely sort of that level up, aren't they? I love the thought of the red light though. So what's the theory behind that? It's more like firelight, doesn't cause the same chemical reaction in the eye?
Yeah, so there's kind of three factors going on with light when it impacts sleep. The first is brightness, right? So generally speaking, everything should be dimmer at night, right? So even that light over there, well, it's a red bulb and it's great. Really, I should have a lampshade around the whole thing, like I do in my bedroom, to make things dimmer. Now, what we see is when we look at sunlight, if you were to measure it with a spectrometer, gives us a spectral distribution. It shows us different colored wavelengths of light, which we just see as the sun changing throughout the daytime from sunrise to sunset. Now, at sunrise and at sunset, it's a lot more reddy, ambery, yellow, what we call warmer wavelengths. They have much longer wavelengths electromagnetically, which makes them less energizing. And then throughout the daytime, when the sun's very high in the sky, it has a lot of blue and green light, which have much shorter wavelengths and are very energizing. So nature wanted to give us lots of exposure to blue and green light in the day, wakes us up, stimulates us, drives us, brings our cortisol levels up, makes us go out, hunt, fight, flight, gather, do all those ancestral things. And then at the beginning and the end of the day, we get a lot more of the warmer colors, and that helps us to wind down. And when we look at firelight, for example, it's got a lot of the reds and the ambers, very, very, very little of the blue and the greens. So the theory is that if we can limit the amount of blue light exposure in the evening by turning lights off, or better yet, using like dim red lights, then we can reduce the impact on sleep. And then a third factor, which is even more complex, is like the flicker effect of bulbs, because some bulbs flicker thousands of times, kind of per minute, and that can have a very excitatory or stimulating effect on the brain as well. Candles, wow. a good candle in the bedroom, it's the best.
But do candles not flicker?
So candles do, but they don't flicker at the same rate. You can see the flicker of a candle, right? But with the screen, you can't see the flicker because it's happening on literally a millisecond kind of effect. Wow.
So it's like a, almost non-perceptible strobe light or something going off.
Yeah, it's every LED light on the planet.
Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating. And you've so we can change the light that's being processed by us by things like blue light blocking glasses, as you said. It's accessible to everyone. You can buy them on Amazon, have them delivered tomorrow. Then there's different shades or darkness depending on what time of day. You also mentioned supplements earlier. Are there any supplements that you recommend for people if they're struggling?
So I take magnesium. I take very high doses of magnesium every single day. Magnesium is a little bit like, you could make an analogy, the currency in your bank account. It's a mineral that is required for a very large number, maybe 350 to 400 now, they've shown in the medical literature, different biochemical reactions in the body, including the production of energy, the production of melatonin itself, and many other functions. So we used to get a lot of magnesium from our rainwater and from kind of crops and, things that came from the earth, because the soil was very rich in magnesium and many other nutrients. These days, the health of the soil on the planet is much lower. We obviously consume a much more highly processed diet, more alcohol, more caffeine, poorer sleep, sometimes a little bit of chronic over-exercising even, chronic overworking, exposure to lots of tech. All of these things, use up a lot of magnesium. So when there's less money going in the bank account, more transactions going out, we get in this state of like, But just simply, I take a magnesium glycinate supplement. Really helps me to relax, to wind down. I take it with each meal of the day. But, my girlfriend, for example, has just started taking it in the evenings, and she finds that it really, really helps her to sleep more deeply. So I use that. There are other, many other herbs and stuff that have been used traditionally, the valerian roots, the kava teas, the lavender, the chamomiles, all of these sorts of things. But, and perhaps we'll touch on this soon, if not next. If you don't have the fundamental underpinnings of your circadian rhythm and your body clock kind of nailed down, which are lifestyle behaviors, then, no herb will ever help you to unlock that super sleep.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I remember the first time I tried Valerian, and I was very thinking, this isn't going to work. And I've knocked out for like hours. It didn't smell very nice, but it does. Kava though, I have tried that recently. Had some sent over from the Pacific Islands or wherever it comes from, and it tastes revolting. Like, it's the worst tasting thing I think I've ever had. So I had it twice. I don't think it made any difference because I was too busy going.
We might have had different ones. I had some Yogi tea, the brand Yogi tea, and it came over from America because it's actually it's illegal in the UK.
It is.
We have some strange.
I didn't get any really. Sorry. Yeah.
I tried it, and I found it very relaxing, especially when I hit 2 or 3 tea bags at once. It was a very nice sedative effect.
Right. Okay. Well, this was one that accidentally found its way to my house from an island somewhere, and it's gross. I'll send you some.
That's brilliant.
What about FiveHTP? That's something I think I've come across in reading before.
Yeah, so there are people that stack 5-HTP with tryptophan. These are all precursors of melatonin. So 5-HTP, tryptophan, magnesium together are part of the chemical conversion that becomes melatonin. But I think it can be very reductionist for us to go down the road of supplements for sleep, because whilst you can, optimize sleep through certain supplements, and again, it's a case by case basis, right? Everyone needs to experiment with these things individually. The fact is, there are far stronger factors underpinning our brain's ability to release melatonin nightly. And that is, your stress levels, your exposure to technology, the light that comes through your eyes, what type that is, actually the temperature of your body and your bedroom, So these factors are kind of the key, what we call zeitgebers, or time givers from nature, our stress levels, the temperature in the environment, the light in the environment, our breathing patterns that tell our body, are we alert and focused? Are we winding down? And should we be releasing lots of this master? It's not even a sleep hormone, melatonin. It's an immunological hormone. It's an anti-cancer hormone. It's an anti-aging hormone. It repairs, the mitochondria within every single cell of our body. So when people say that, melatonin, get that over a counter, or I'll take this supplement to increase it, it's there like, no. This is one of the most important hormones in your entire body, and the more that you can do to tune yourself up to nature's cycles and produce it yourself, the longer you'll live and the better you'll feel.
We say something very similar with testosterone. Actually, we say that a synthetic testosterone isn't magic. Like, it can change your life, but you've got to be making optimal lifestyle choices. And you're kind of saying the same thing, which is there are supplements that may aid sleep, but unless you are, unless you've optimized your room for the light, the temperature, unless your diet is right, you're exercising appropriately, then you're kind of wasting your time.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the thing is, we all have health handbrakes, and that's okay. Mine for a long time has been keeping myself probably a little bit too dialed into what's happening socially too late at night, through tech and stuff like that. And so I was doing all of these other fantastic things and not really getting to the deepest sleep that I could. But until we start to at least begin to take a more holistic view of everything, then, band-aid approaches to stuff, whether it's testosterone or melatonin, they may make us feel better in the short term, but they will never address, the fundamental lifestyle changes that we need to make. And yes, those are scary, right? Changing routines is scary. Trying, new exercise habits. I've just started a rehabilitation program with a coach in Australia this week. I've had some real problems with my hips and various other things for quite a long time, causing me a lot of chronic pain for the last few years. And I've just had to, rejuvenate my entire training program, incorporate all of these rehabilitation drills, all of these neuro techniques that I now have to do every day, and completely change aspects of my diet to get under some immune symptoms that I've had. And it was really frustrating and it was really scary. And a week later, I feel amazing. And so, we have to be willing to face, what is it, the quote, and I can't remember who it is, to enter the cave that we fear to seek, because the treasure is hidden.
We live in such a fast-paced, convenient, throwaway society, though, don't we? It's people generally, I think, don't want to do that difficult work if there's a fast fix. Give me that tablet, or I'll just, or whatever it might be, rather than unlearning some sort of process to relearn it, or, as you say, going into that deep, dark cave.
I think it's really interesting because I've been looking into the work recently of a guy, an entrepreneur. I'm sure you might have seen him on the internet. He's certainly doing the rounds, called Alex Hormozi.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen Alex? So he talks about developing unbelievable offers for people, right? And he talks about how he compares meditation with a Xanax pill, right? And he says that, the ultimate offer, does what it says it's going to do, and it does it quickly. And as soon as you buy it, you get that result, right? And there's no confusion. And, so you can meditate for 5 years for 20 minutes every day, and it's stressful and it causes challenges sometimes, and you feel uncomfortable and you've got to sit there and do it. Or you can take a Xanax and just wonderfully relaxed, right? And I think a little bit about in terms of like sleep and coaching and lifestyle change. And, for a lot of people, it is simpler to take the, pharmacological route, or, use alcohol, or use any other, prescription or otherwise drug to induce like an effect that we want. But I think what makes it more attractive to people to genuinely aspire and to explore lifestyle change is that when they do it in the support and the camaraderie of a community. And I look back to all of the greatest achievements I've made in terms of changes in my life, and they've always been guided by or supported by somebody or a group of people. And so it's, the connection that has drawn me into that willingness to explore and, take the higher road.
Yeah, it definitely that sense of community, without a doubt, makes a difference. Whether it's a men's health community, allowing men to talk about the problems that they're having, whether it's a community to change chronic hip pain, whether it's an emotional change you're looking to make. Yeah, that's a huge factor. I love it. I think in Japanese it's called ikigai, this sense of community, isn't it?
Yeah.
Quite fascinating when you look at that. But I think the Alex Hormozi's Xanax and meditation comparison reminded me a little bit of your bank balance with magnesium, because Xanax, you're still taking something away. You're still withdrawing something from the body. You're not putting stuff back in as you would be with meditation.
Yeah.
So you might get that few hours of sleep and you feel a bit wobbly for a while, but then you're no further forward. So you end up doing it again the next day and again the next day, and combining it with alcohol or whatever. Whereas the harder work with the meditation eventually has much bigger rewards.
Yeah, and I think just to speak to that and the impact of community, it's in the short term, meditating with a group or meditating with a teacher, or these days even an app or something to help keep you accountable and to help provide a space for you to relate to while you're going through this challenging, unknown, perhaps even untrusting change initially to begin with, is what makes all the difference, right? Because with the Xanax, you're guaranteed to feel something. With a meditation, it's almost like being in that community and someone saying, I've been doing this for 10 years, trust me, you're going to feel amazing if you can stay committed, or your teacher's there, Zen on a mountaintop, and they're like, I want to be that guy. There's kind of like social proof, that this is the path that you want to take. And although you can't necessarily see yourself, the vision of yourself in the future, I think that's important. And it's a lot of, the work I do with men, especially around sleep, is, it's very powerful for me to share the testimony and the experiences of men who I've seen triple their testosterone in 12 weeks by, really focusing down on their lifestyle and their sleep, or, men who have completely transformed emotionally and spiritually because they finally kind of stopped putting their foot so hard on the accelerator, because when we are propped up by caffeine at one end of the day and usually alcohol at the other end of the day, we never really feel that sense of exhaustedness, or the sense that we don't have something to give, because we're always stimulated or we're always a bit loose. So we feel like we're really within ourselves and funny and we're productive and we work hard. But if you strip those things away, we're quite often left asking, okay, so can I be that person? Do I want to be that person even? Is that the real person? Or is there some things in the way of a more sustained kind of version of myself without all of those things, that has more stamina and strength and vigor and vitality, and usually gets much harder boners as well.
Without doubt. I think that's scary for people, isn't it? To think, who am I without alcohol or without caffeine? Because people do use them, as you said earlier. I think you used the words, they're the most common narcotics or something, in the world. Most people do rely on them to a large degree. So, and it goes back to that emotional side as well. That's a deep question that probably most people don't ask. Who am I without those things?
Mm-hmm.
Is that work? Is that something you come across when you're doing your work with your clients?
Yeah, I think look, what we're talking about here is doing the best that we can with the tools that we've been given. Okay, there's absolutely no judgment. I always say I'm here to educate, not judge. When I speak with any client, he says to me, oh, I fell into a bit of a hole with the beers this weekend, or, I drank a few too many coffees this week, or I did a bit too much of this or that. And I say, look, ultimately, there is something at the root of this behavior, right? And usually, when we go deeper into men's work, into men's circles, into sitting with our emotions and our experiences in early life, we're sometimes slightly scarred as men by things that have happened that have led for us to find the need to prove ourselves in this endeavor or that endeavor, or to not feel that sense of courage, or, to feel really self-sufficient enough or self-confident enough to explore life without those things. And I don't think that that's, it's not a moral failing. It's not a personal failing. It's largely as a byproduct of living in quite a toxic society. The modern world is not very forgiving of past mistakes. It's not very equipped to help us understand the ways in which our children develop, and the experiences we have in our early lives, and how that leads us down the path of becoming more like this or that person, to need to feel that we're fitting into this kind of box that society gives us. And obviously, that's the beginning of an entire journey for a man. But I think, having begun that journey myself, it is probably the most powerful and worthwhile one that you can ever take. And good quality sleep is at the cornerstone of kind of the healthy experience of that journey, I think.
Yeah, well, as we said at the beginning, we spend a third of our life asleep, so it has to be important. Anything you do that often surely has to have a huge effect. And we said, blue light blocking glasses, red light on the night time, temperature of the room is important. What about, how important is it to completely block all the light out? Should people have, the blackout blinds? Does that make a difference?
So I think, it might be a good time to I would love to give the listeners like some of the most tangible, impactful kind of takeaways. And we mentioned a few of them there. So obviously I use my blue light blocking glasses every night, especially if I'm around any type of light that I can't control, right? So if I've got, my red lamp on in my bedroom, my candle light, me and my girlfriend, we don't wear blue light blocking glasses because there's no blue light, right? But in any environment where there's, other people in the house that don't really care as much about my sleep, which is all my housemates, or I'm in, an outdoors environment or a work environment, I'm traveling, or, any of these environments, I'll use these orange or amber or red glasses. I'll also make sure that my room is cool and well ventilated. So, outdoors every single day, there's a natural drop in air temperature, the same way in which there's a natural appearance of darkness, right? So darkness and temperature together, reduction in, are the chief signals to produce lots of melatonin in the brain. When we get cool, we also get more relaxed. So think about if you're stressed, we call it hot-headed, you're really hot-headed. Quite literally, the cortisol and the adrenaline running through your body is heating your body. So light in terms of what's coming in my eye. In the bedroom, I've got blackout blinds. So it's my number one non-negotiable. I do start to debate it a little bit in the summer because I can see the sunrise out my bedroom window. So sometimes I'd like to just be awake as the sun's coming up. But certainly if you've got any what we call light pollution coming in from the outdoors, street lights, all of that sort of stuff, 100% you need blackout blinds. Your skin, your eyes, your eyelids, they're light sensitive. Your brain will perceive a slight threat, a minor threat in the environment if it's not completely dark and cool and quiet. After that, and this is one that really blows many people's minds, and it certainly did mine, is the way that we breathe whilst we're sleeping. So many of us, especially as men, if we start to put on a little bit of extra weight, perhaps around the neck or the belly, we tend not to develop the most comfortable sleeping positions. Sometimes we're on the back, and I don't know if anybody's guys can relate to snoring, for example. Well, snoring isn't healthy, unfortunately. It's a bit of an elephant in the room. I mouth tape every single night. So I have a small piece of micropore tape that I put on my lips because I'm a snorer, because I move a lot during the night as well. So sometimes I'll sleep on this side, comfy, then I'll roll on my back. And if I start snoring, I'm mouth breathing. And what we know is that when we mouth breathe, that makes our body more stressed as opposed to nasal breathing. So I use like a little bit of tape. There's loads of different brands out there now that, designed all this really nice, simple like tape that's breathable and all this sort of stuff. So light, cooling things down, breathing effectively. So through the nose at night. Technology, it's gone from the bedroom for me. Nothing. I don't charge mobile phones in the bedroom. I don't have laptops in the bedroom. I occasionally will maybe watch a little bit of Netflix early evening on my bed or something like that. But, before bed, everything leaves. Morning light exposure. So at the same time as, helping us to wind down in the evening, we need the correct light exposure at the other end of the day to help get our 24-hour body clock in sync. So if we laid in bed all day with the blackout blind down all day, our body would not produce melatonin at nighttime because it would only begin its day, getting energized as soon as it saw some light. So think about it. This is all kind of nature's gifts. Lots of light and lots of darkness at night. Where would I go next from there? So eating. I don't like to eat very close to bedtime. Ancestrally, we could only really eat during the day hours of daylight. We know from research that our digestive metabolism, our pancreas, our liver, our gallbladder, our stomach, they function as organs most effectively during the daytime. So, as cavemen, it's not very convenient to modern life often. But, when we're out hunting and fishing, gathering in the daytime, we weren't taking it home, waiting until 9 o'clock and then cooking it. We were, consuming it there and then in the day. And our digestive capacity kind of reflected that. So for me, it's 3 or 4 hours before bed. I try, not always, I'm not absolutely militant with this. Sometimes I go out, God forsake, for a meal with my girlfriend late at night, or, have a glass of wine very occasionally. But I try to limit all food and drink for a few hours before bed, especially like higher carb and especially anything sugary, because blood sugar levels fluctuating in the night will lead to really disturbed sleep. I'm not sure what we're up to there, maybe about 6 or 7.
Yeah, that's some really, really good points in there. And I think, you're talking about digestion there is important, isn't it? Because if your body's busy digesting on a nighttime, it's diverting away from the other things it should be doing.
Yeah. One of the things that was clearest to me is that when you look at the research around these circadian clock genes that exist within our digestive system, every single process that the body goes through is energy consuming, right? And so when we are in a state of stress or in a state of digestion at night, not as much energy is being diverted to like the processes such as autophagy and apoptosis, which are like the cleaning and the death and the rejuvenation and the rebirth of our cells. So quite literally, sleep is the most like miraculous anti-aging function that the human body has. But if we don't put the pennies in the slot to get that working properly, we're putting pennies in the digestive slot instead, or in the stress slot, then not as much energy, which the body only has a limited amount of at any one time, is going to be going towards those functions.
Yeah, that makes sense. Everything in the body is either destroying or building, isn't it? You've got anabolism or catabolism. So we're either breaking down food or building up new tissue, or with autophagy, I guess, destroying old cells and replenishing them with new ones.
Rebirth, strengthening or weakening, really, isn't it? That's the
thought.
Caffeine's another big one. So
you hear various things, don't you? Don't have anything after midday, don't after 10 in the morning. But then I know people that drink coffee and go to bed straight away.
I think I'll speak to my personal experience of this, right, is that I was in a chronically stressed state for a really long time in my young adult life. And so I was never going to repair my testosterone and really feel my best as a man if I stayed in that state of chronic stress. So for me, the consumption of caffeine regularly, over a cup of coffee a day, in the afternoon especially, was a driver of that keeping me suppressed, keeping me in this state of inflammation, in this state of stress, essentially. For some people, I know that caffeine is a great part of their lives. I say to them, the half-life, so the amount time that it takes to clear half of that caffeine out of the system, on average, 5 to 7 hours, can even be as high as 12 hours for some people. So apparently, due to genetics, we can have different length of caffeine metabolism. So I say to people, your safe bet is usually a good singular dose of high quality caffeine somewhere between about 9 a.m. and 12. We don't want to consume caffeine within the first hour and a half of waking up. We want to move our bodies. We want to hydrate our bodies. We want to get bright, natural light exposure, all of those things that will naturally regulate our cortisol rhythm, our stress hormones, to get us energized. If we start to pour artificial cortisol and adrenaline, which is what is produced in large amounts in the body when we consume stimulant caffeine, if we do that first thing in the morning, we downregulate our body's own ability to produce these hormones. So I like to say, get yourself up, ground yourself, center yourself, get ready to kick ass, and then have, your good quality mold-free coffee beans, or your matcha, or your cacao, or, whatever else. And if you really want to, stay balanced, stay grounded, stay relaxed, don't continue to, guzzle coffee into the afternoon and evening. And if you find that, the sort of person that does require something to take the edge off at the later end of the day, whatever that thing is, it's probably because you've had your foot on the accelerator and you're too revved up. And, yes, we can choose to do things that are stressful, but when we pour coffee, particularly down our neck all day, every day, it's like putting gasoline on fire, right? You So of course we need the fire brigade to come and put the fire out eventually, because there's so much petrol on it that it's never going to go out by itself. So not putting the petrol in the fire in the first place, or just enough to keep it burning in the morning and then letting it go out in the afternoon, is a bit of an analogy I like to use with people around caffeine.
Yeah, that makes sense. And have you got any tips for people if they are going to stop? Because I remember I gave up coffee for 3 years. I started again during the pandemic, actually, and do enjoy it. And before that, I thought, I'm not addicted to it. I just like the taste. But when I stopped, I had the worst headache for like about a week. So should people go cold turkey, or is there a better way?
Everybody's individual, right? But ultimately, I say to people, if you're having 8 cups of coffee now, cut down to 4. Start to close the time window that you're having your caffeine in first. You can try some decaf. It still has caffeine in it. Replace the habit. Get a good quality herbal tea. Some nice flavored water. Something that's going to stop you from thinking, I want a drink right now. I'm in the office, I'm doing the coffee round, or I'm at home and I got to stand up from my desk and go and do something for a few minutes to break the loop from work. I say to people, get outdoors, take lots more magnesium, hydrate yourself with good quality electrolytes, good quality water. Because a lot of the time, like, your ability to function without caffeine depends upon the quality of your nutrition. So if your body's naturally energized because you're getting natural light, you've got good quality nutrition going in the body, you're getting all your nutrients, your micro minerals, all that sort of stuff, you got enough energy without the coffee, right? It's like I stopped coffee a few days ago. I'm going through this autoimmune paleo diet. I'm not allowed coffee and many of the things I love. And I don't feel like exhausted. I'm not getting that boom hit, in the morning, but I'm also consuming like an ancestrally appropriate diet. I'm taking all my supplements. I'm spending lots of time outdoors. I'm prioritizing my sleep at night. So, that's a bit of a complex answer to probably a simple question that you asked me, but start to reduce the caffeine, start to think about that and start to think about changing other areas of life that can naturally energize you. A cold shower in the morning, a great way to boost levels of dopamine, adrenaline, and cortisol without having to drink coffee, for example.
Yeah, I love that. And the autoimmune protocol, the paleo on steroids, if you like, approach to life, that was one of the big things that really helped push my health forward a decade ago, when I discovered how powerful it is to eat that way. And everyone is different, as we've said a few times, but for me, that particular approach has so many benefits.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me, because it's quite a rough week one.
Yeah.
I think I'm missing, what am I missing the most? I'm missing rice at the moment because I'm not allowed rice for the first few weeks. I'm missing potatoes. I was a big fan of potato mash. And I'm missing cacao. I actually really enjoy drinking cacao as a coffee substitute, but I'm cold turkey on it all right now.
I remember I had, before I went onto that particular diet or lifestyle approach, I guess, I had some food intolerance tests. So we're going back 15 years at least. And they said, you're intolerant to potatoes. I said, don't be so ridiculous. I love potatoes, but I got to the point where they were making me really ill. And I would get super sleepy. My joints would become really painful. And I remember coming back from eating Sunday dinner with my family and hardly even been able to hold the steering wheel because my hands were so sore, and then fall asleep on the sofa. And my children would call it a potato coma, because even if, like, Joanne my wife was hoovering next to me, or the kids were shouting, I would not wake up. And when I stopped eating potatoes, which of course are part of the nightshade family, my life improved no end.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not even that a one size fits all. So I can't wait to welcome potatoes back into my life at some point. But I've had some worsening immune reactions in my skin and things like that, and I've acknowledged that I need a period of cleansing, a period of kind of allowing my body, my nervous system to regulate itself again, to come back into balance, and then to perhaps welcome some of these things back in smaller, more measured amounts. Not like, rely on them and be so reactive to them because the body's being flooded by that thing. Quite often in functional medicine, when we talk about food sensitivities and tolerances, we say, what's the one thing that you struggle to give up? And someone will say coffee or this or that. And we say that's probably the thing that your body's most overwhelmed by and that it could do with a break from.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That and needing better sleep.
Yeah, better sleep and that one thing that you love, probably the thing you've had too much of.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you want to add anything else, but I think we've got some really great takeaways for people that are listening. Thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, and I'm gonna make some changes. You've motivated me. I think the red light on a nighttime is going to be a big one. I'll get the candles on. Well, actually, what about what does it matter what you wear?
So that's really interesting. I've transitioned now towards more natural cotton and natural clothes, because even when I'm training in the gym, because wearing these thick polyesters and these kind of synthetic materials and then sweating and sleeping in them, a lot of the like microplastics and things like that can transfer and become endocrine disruptors. So loose clothing, loose kind of cotton natural clothing, or nothing at all. Quite often I sleep completely naked because it keeps me cooler. So that's considerations, but yeah, especially not like really tight boxer shorts, because they will like kind of suffocate your lymphatic system and stop your brain from like detoxifying and moving around all of these kind of substances in the lymph when you sleep at night. Because you think about it, no cavemen, unfortunately, I'm not trying to shit on Calvin Klein here, but no cavemen wore Calvin Kleins that were strapped around their waist, suffocating their male parts. So the loose kind of cotton is more my thing these days.
That's interesting, actually, because we create our testosterone in our testicles on nighttime when we're asleep, and obviously our testicles are outside of our body because they're there to cool them down.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, if you're then warming them up with super tight, man-made fabrics on a nighttime, probably doesn't help.
Probably doesn't.
Yeah. Well, you've just sparked off a new thought. Daniel, I've thoroughly enjoyed today. Thank you so much for joining us. And I know we're going to be talking offline as well about what I'm going to be peppering you with questions. But thank you very much for today, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yeah, no worries. It's been a pleasure, and perhaps we'll do a part 2 sometime.
That would be great. I'd love that. Take care. Bye.
Take it easy.